Alrighty. Well, here we are, regular Drews.
Welcome, everyone.
Episode 55. We are going to be talking about a history of Nancy Drew adaptations.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
I feel like we should have like a fanfare or something. It just feels like so momentous to me. I don't know why. Probably because of the length of the document with which we are about to review.
I'm a little wordy when I'm writing, but that's okay. I think once we get into it, it'll flow pretty quickly here.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited. This is a lot of information, Kori. This is very impressive, I have to say.
Oh, well, thank you.
Kori is a master researcher. I just want to throw that out to our listeners.
Well, thank you, if you say so.
She just, once she starts something, she just doesn't stop until she has, like, explored every avenue. It's what makes her an amazing detective.
No.
You know? But yeah, she has written us a timeline that spans from 1923 to present day.
And into the future, possibly, hopefully.
And into the future, possibly, oh Lord. You know, just covering every single Nancy Drew film adaptation.
Or TV.
And other adaptations. TV, right, and Broadway.
That's the future part, hopefully.
Okay. Yeah, that has existed and or not existed.
So I did try to make this, when I was, putting everything in order, I tried to make it mostly chronological. We're going to jump back and forth a little bit just because we're going to go more by the specific actress that played Nancy rather than, just overall chronological. But I think once we start, it'll make sense with how we're jumping around. But we're also going to throw in a little bit of information about projects that were supposed to be made but never ended up getting made. So TV shows and movies in that regard. We aren't going to touch on the games in this. Of course, the games are wonderful adaptations that we absolutely love, but we've already done an episode on that, and we really just don't have time with how much information there is here. So if you want to go learn more about the game adaptations, go listen to episode 30, but otherwise this is just going to be on-screen adaptations. And then, like you said, we'll talk about the Broadway potential at the end.
I remember we talked about that a while ago, and I was just so sad that it didn't end up being a thing.
I found the songs.
It would have been... Yeah, I remember finding one of them.
I found 6.
Did you find more?
6 in total,
my God. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, we might have to pause to listen to those.
We might.
Okay, so just a fair warning to you listeners, I actually haven't read the entirety of this research that Kori has compiled. So I'm going to be, learning about this as you learn about it, and I'm very excited to. Yeah.
Well, you know some of this already because we've already covered some of the adaptations. So some of the information, of course, it's relevant to repeat again here. Not really repeat, but elaborate on here. I actually watched everything in preparation for this. So I've now seen every Nancy Drew adaptation, with the exception of a few episodes of the 1977 show of season 2, just because I haven't gotten to those yet, and I'm savoring them because they're my favorite adaptation. So I've seen the show, just not every single episode yet. So, but I'm getting there. But I finished the 1995 show last night, actually. So.
Oh, wow. It's on, you told me it's on Tubi, right?
It is, yes. And it is, we'll get there.
Yeah. We'll have to cover that in a future episode
I hope so.
as well. Yeah.
We're not going to go too much into our opinions here because I mean, it's been a while since I've seen some of these anyway. I have seen all of them now, but it's been a while, so we won't go too much into our personal opinions. Mostly just the history, but
We'll see, Kori.
we'll have
see.
to mention some things, but that's okay.
But so I don't know. I guess how do we do 3 words for this?
Oh, okay. Actresses, I guess.
Well, yeah. Okay. So actresses, Warner Brothers, maybe?
Yes, absolutely.
And then I don't know. Harriet Stradmeyer Adams, maybe?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay.
I like it. I was going to say history, but that's obvious from the title.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I was trying to think who are our major players here.
definitely Harriet.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, do you want to kick us off with Benita?
Okay, so on February 2nd, 1923, Benita Granville was born in Manhattan. She's the only child of 2 vaudeville stage performers. That's amazing. Very cool. She started her career at 3 years old, and she started off stage acting. She got her first movie role at 9 and appeared in at least 20 films before landing the role of Nancy. She was in Little Women, Anne of Green Gables, these 3, which I've never heard of. But she was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
And she was the youngest ever person at the time to be nominated for an Oscar at 13.
Yep.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is crazy. That is crazy. So she had quite the auspicious start. And then in 1937, Harriet Stradmeyer Adams would sell the exclusive film rights to Nancy Drew to Jack Warner, who's the president of Warner Brothers at the time, for $6,000, which is about $123,000 today, which seems a bit of a lowball.
It absolutely
me.
was, yes.
Okay.
Harriet, we'll get into it later, but she later said that she felt pretty naive because of how, I mean, she had, just taken over the company like 7 years prior. So
Wow.
she's still pretty new to running a company herself.
Sure.
And so later she did feel she felt kind of lowballed on that, but
she regrets.
exactly.
Yeah. Yes. And it seems like Warner Brothers probably still owns the rights today from that purchase in 1937.
Yep.
That is insane.
Yeah.
We don't know if, they ever lost the rights to it and then bought it back at any point. That's maybe a little bit
sure not.
unclear. But that has got to be maybe I don't know anything about the history of film, but I can only imagine one of the longest holding rights to a copyright or whatever from 1937 to 2023. Wow.
And
I can
probably
understand why.
all the way into the future. That was a pretty good get for Jack Warner, wasn't it?
Pretty good deal. But so when she sold the rights, this is not the first time that they tried to make a screen adaptation of one of their series, because Edward Stradmeyer tried to get Tom Swift made into a movie in 1917, but nobody really had any interest in it. Then, of course, in April 1938, Warner Brothers announced that they would that Benita Granville was going to star in Nancy Drew in an upcoming series of movies, and they began filming in June of that year. Also in that summer, in August, they announced plans for a Nancy Drew radio show that would run alongside the movie franchise and also star Benita, but that apparently never got made, which is sad. That would have been so good.
If there was any recordings, they are lost, and any scripts that were written for it are lost to time as well, unfortunately. But that would have been really cool to see what the content of that was going to be. Oh, well.
Yeah. And then in November of that year, Nancy Drew Detective premieres with our star-studded cast. Everyone in the movies was already kind of well established as far, as their acting careers went. The movie cost $131,000 to make, which is $2.8 million today, which is, I feel like, maybe a small budget.
Yeah. It
I
is,
don't know.
yeah. I mean, by today's standards, absolutely.
Yeah. It earned 14,500, which is $300,000 today, in its first week in the box office. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell like what that means. At the time, I don't really know enough about the movie industry at the time about whether or not that would be considered a good start. But apparently, all 4 movies did continue to play in theaters for years after their release, so it must have been somewhat successful to continue to do that. You said that you also couldn't find the amount that Benita was paid for the role, but IMDb says she earned $500 a week for another movie that she did around the same time. So maybe something similar. She was a, established enough name.
She was already nominated for an Oscar by this point. Like,
right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So this first film had a couple of different working titles, including Nancy Drew Gets the Passport to Larkspur Lane, and Mystery at Larkspur Lane, which is interesting as to why they felt like they needed to change that. But who knows? The second movie, Nancy Drew Reporter, was already in production at the time of the release of the first movie's release. And of course, the success of the first movie, led to the decision to continue on with the series and make another one after the second one. All 4 of these movies were directed by William Clemens, and all 4 screenplays were written by Kenneth Gamay?
I don't know. Gamut? I don't know.
Who knows? All 4 movies were comedy B movies, which means that they were limited to about a 60-minute runtime, and they would show in movie theaters before the main feature film. So that's what it means to be a B movie, which is interesting because I never considered like where that phrase or terminology came from. But of course, it came from like the fact that a movie theater has an A movie,
Yeah.
and they also have B. That was just interesting.
I also tried for a really long time because I thought it would be really cool to find something like this, but like a picture of a movie theater marquee outside that has like Nancy Drew on the title. But because it's a B movie, it wasn't really.
It wasn't, advertised like that.
I could only find one instance of Benita having her name on a movie marquee, but it was for a movie that she did after Nancy Drew. So, oh well.
Gotcha.
But I thought that would have been cool, but probably didn't happen very often around the country, having Nancy Drew's name on the marquee.
Right.
Oh well.
Speaking of Benita, she was only 15 when she starred as Nancy. And that year, I guess the same year that the first one came out, she starred in 5 other movies.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Oh, you should read this old, the movie review that you put in here. Because it is really good. I read this.
Oh, you did? Okay. So this this is from a December 1938 edition of Variety, and I have to credit Variety here. They have excellent online archives. I was able to find a lot of really cool, like old reviews from this series of movies in their in their archives. So I did put a few other in our notes here if you want to go and read them, but they're really long, so we won't take the time to read all of them. But I really liked this review for the first one. It says, fairly worthwhile kid stuff. Based on the series of Juve books by Carolyn Keene, Nancy Drew Detective is the first in a string of bread and butter pictures for the Moppets. I just love the 1930s terminology in this. It's too cute. Too light for adult fare and therefore limited to dueling at matinees or occasional holiday nights when the youngsters are on the loose. Benita Granville getting to the young miss age, parentheses, she drives her own car, so she's apparently supposed to be about 16, and softening just a trifle towards the boys is the hub around which the action revolves. Or, to put it more accurately, she's the spark plug that keeps the story rolling. As alert, curious, and fearless as a Scotty pup, she's always on the jump, always poking her nose into hornets' nests, and since it wouldn't do to kill her off, always thwarting the devious plans of the rogues she uncovers. As sidekick, she has the boy next door, Frankie Thomas, who's due to be written into the script as the properly innocuous romance. There's also her stern but kindly father, John Littell, who just to be prepared for future script exigencies is a lawyer. Headed for comedy attention in future editions of the series is a lame-brained police inspector whom the girl Gumshoe puts to shame. All strictly lightweight stuff, but harmless and pleasant, harmless and mildly pleasant, particularly considering the budget. Direction is acceptable since it keeps the action spinning and doesn't let subtleties impede the story. Miss Granville is forthright and refreshing as the bright-eyed heroine, while young Thomas, Littell, and others are there for the goods when called on. Brandon Tynan, a familiar and colorful character actor on Broadway for years, contributes a believable performance as a doctor beaten up by the kidnappers.
Wow.
Isn't that fun?
It's also like, just, you know, by like normal standards, just like a good review.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like a well-written, like accurate review of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, like 1930s lingo or whatever aside.
Oh, that's the
like,
best part for me.
Which is the best, which is absolutely the best part. It's just like that is exactly what the movie is. Harmless, but worthwhile kid stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So on February 18th, 1939, the following year, Nancy Drew Reporter premieres, and this is Nancy's first ever murder case. Reviews for this one weren't as good as the last one, but still positive overall. In June 17 of the same year, 1939, Nancy Drew Troubleshooter premieres. The whole movie was made in just 1 month?
Yep.
Holy shit. They really pumped these things out, man. And it had a bigger budget because of the success of the first two. This one was another murder case. And when it was showing in theaters, this film ended with a little clip of Bonita and Frankie, who plays Ted in the movies, announcing the next movie, which is very cute. Carson has a romance plot in this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. I bet that's bad. And Nancy and Ted were also supposed to have a kissing scene, but it was cut from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
This is drama. This is top tier drama.
I have a screenshot of it there in the notes if you want to follow that
do?
link.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on.
I'm like, why would you cut this? We need, yeah.
No. Oh, it's awful.
I know.
Oh, this is such a sad little kiss. Oh. Sorry, continue.
Obviously we just finished watching the Hidden Staircase movie, which is the movie after this one, and Carson's love interest is not in that one, so we have to assume it didn't, progress from there.
Poorly.
But yeah. Well, Nancy's character, like her whole thing in the movie is like trying to sabotage it because she's not comfortable with Dad like moving on.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. So and then Ted has like a little crush on the woman as well, and it's like it causes
so she's
drama.
uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, it's weird.
Oh man. So hold on for a second, because this kiss was supposed to happen in the movie before the Hidden Staircase movie, which is the one that we just watched.
Mm-hmm.
Except that it got cut, so I realized it didn't actually happen. But you're telling me that in the Hidden Staircase movie, both Nancy and Ted are supposed to be close enough to where, like, they could have kissed?
Right.
That does not feel real.
Yeah. What does a 16-year-old's romance story really look like in the 30s, though? It's scandalous for her to be kissing boys at that age, right? So
I'm sorry, but we should post this
that picture
whenever we do this, because Bonita Granville is giving.
Yeah.
And this, like, she is doing her 100% A+ best with, like, this kind of like, I don't want to say swoony, but, like, she's just really leaning into it hard. And then Frankie Thomas is just kind of, like, standing there, like, it feels like he's like, trying to, like, lean away. Like he's not into it. Maybe that's how it was in the movie, but I don't...
Maybe so. I couldn't find the actual scene, like, on YouTube or anything. I wish I could have, but
yeah,
that's
a funny picture, man.
Yeah, it is.
Anyway, okay. So reviews said that this movie was kind of consistent in quality with the previous two, but had some unintentionally funny moments, which sounds accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bonita did say that this was her favorite movie out of the 4, which is interesting.
It was also my favorite, I must say. It was
Really?
cute, yeah.
Okay. Is this the one with the plane? Where they drive a plane and they take a picture? Or no, that's we watched that one before.
There's another scene with a plane in another movie as well.
Oh, okay.
I'm
so
trying to
maybe.
remember which one it was now because I watched them like back to back.
The one that we watched previously was Nancy Drew Detective.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm trying. It's either the second or the third one. I can't remember. But there's a scene with the bad guys where they like try to kill Nancy and Ted in a plane crash, and it's it's very intense. But
okay. So this movie, Nancy Drew Troubleshooter, was supposed to be based off of book number 15, The Haunted Bridge, but they scrapped that in favor of using an original storyline. And apparently, in August, in a letter that Harriet wrote to Mildred in an August 3rd, 1939 letter, Harriet wrote, "I'm glad that you enjoyed the moving picture. I have only seen the first 2, although 3 have been shown in this area, and I have just heard that a 5th is in production. Up to date, we have not found that having Nancy Drew on the screen has increased the sales of the book any, but perhaps it takes a little while to get these things started." Fascinating.
yeah,
Can you imagine owning and, caring about Nancy Drew so much and then not seeing all of the movies
I
that
know.
showed in your area?
Well, she was not a fan of these movies either, but that's the next bullet point. So
Right. Yeah. Yes. So she reportedly felt that she was naive to sell the movie rights when and how she did. Supposedly, she regretted it because she didn't like the portrayal of Nancy and felt that like her personality was too far removed from the Nancy in the books, which I feel is like a totally fair criticism of the films. However, rumor has it that she based the Carson and the revised texts off the John Little's portrayal of him.
That's pretty cool because, he's kind of the more, not more caring because Carson was never an uncaring father, but just more doting than he was in the originals. And then that kind of influenced how she wrote the new Carson. So
I could see
I
that.
like that.
Mildred, however, reportedly liked the films despite the difference from her original manuscripts. Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to know more.
Me too. I'd love to know more about what Mildred thought specifically, but I could not find it.
Do you want to take it from here?
Okay, yes. So September 9th, 1939, Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase premieres. This is, of course, yet another murder case and the second of the 4 movies to be directly based off of one of the books. Reviews for this one praised it for being a great comedy movie, but they criticized it for not making more of an effort to make the mystery appeal to boys.
What?
Yeah.
What does that even mean?
It's too girly. We need boys to be interested as well.
What about the mystery is girly? Someone's murdered, they shoot guns.
Mm-hmm. Well,
what is girly?
The main character is a girl, so automatically it's a girl movie, right?
There's a boy in it.
Yep.
What more do they want?
And it was also criticized for being an unfaithful adaptation of the book, which, I mean, understandable. Fun fact, some copies of the book at the time were printed with a special banner on the cover indicating that it was adapted into a movie. And in order to promote the movie series, Warner Brothers sent press kits to local movie theaters, encouraging them to start Nancy Drew fan clubs with high school girls from their community, as a come to the movie theater and we're going to have watch parties for the Nancy Drew movies, but also you're in this club now. So they had screening nights and they would have other empowering events come meet a woman with a career and hear what it's like for ladies to have jobs.
Wow.
Members who joined would receive a membership card in the mail, and they were instructed to follow certain rules so as to emulate Nancy and her personality.
Shut up.
Rules included
Oh my God.
No smoking, no drinking, no petting. Yeah. Yeah. And Bonita was named the honorary president of the clubs. There's a full list.
My jaw is on the ground.
I have somewhere I have the full list. No smoking, no drinking, no petting. Yeah.
No petting?
Yeah.
AKA no randy business?
No fooling around. Yeah. It also said that
Wow.
girls should pay their own way on dates when they go out with boys. And, what were some of the other ones?
This makes me so angry.
I know.
What if... Oh!
But hey, in
Okay.
exchange for following these rules, you got a signed autographed photo of Benita Granville. So
Maybe it's worth it. I don't know. You can just lie. It's just that, like, to use Nancy Drew, which is like, this like feminist girl power thing, as a way to subjugate and control women.
yeah,
Oh.
Nancy wouldn't be doing these things. Okay.
Sorry, continue.
Okay, well, getting into some of our canceled projects here, a fifth Nancy Drew movie, which had the working title Dangerous Nancy Drew, was already in production at the time of the Hidden Staircase premiere. It was actually already, likely had already been filmed at this time. We don't know for sure, but an interview that Frankie Thomas Jr. did later in his life, he was the actor that played Ted in this, he said he remembers filming a fifth movie, and it just never got released. So who knows, but we do know that Kenneth Gamay, however we say his name, he actually wrote 8 total screenplays for this franchise. However, before The Hidden Staircase premiered, Warner Brothers announced that they were switching gears and instead going to move the franchise forward as a series of 2-reelers. So this meant that they were going to do like 20-minute shorts rather than the 60-minute films. Quite a pivot, but then just 1 week later, in August 1939, Warner Brothers announced that, yes, The Hidden Staircase is still going to be released as a movie as planned, and that's still going to come out 3 months from this date of the announcement. But they were canceling all plans to produce any future Nancy Drew films or 2-reelers. They didn't specify a reason, but a couple things here. Benita was planning to leave her contract with Warner Brothers at this time. She was actually going to end up going to MGM Studios right after this, and they probably decided to just end things rather than recast her in the series. And also, fans were really not happy with the decision to switch to the 2-reelers, and so maybe they were like, probably not worth it. If people hate it already, they might not watch, so...
Well, it just seems really challenging to have to write a mystery in 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
Like, what would you even...
I know.
How would you even do that? Yeah.
And we'll talk about that when we get to 1995, because that series is 20 minutes. Well, 30, but with ads and everything, more like 22. But anyway. Following her time as Nancy, Benita's going to go on to star in 28 more movies between 1939 and 1956. She actually didn't stay with that MGM contract for very long, probably because she was getting lesser supporting roles. But then in 1941, she signed with RKO Pictures, who I don't even know if they're still around anymore. But then in 1943, filmed their anti-Nazi propaganda movie, Hitler's Children, which she later says is her favorite movie out of all of her roles. And it was actually a huge success. It was one of the biggest movies of 1943. Not just for RKO Pictures, like overall, it was massive. I mean, it's 1943.
Right.
This is a very, very relevant issue in the world. So it was, anyway. Yeah.
Interesting. Wait, did you watch it?
I have not, but I've read the summary of it. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Here's a fun little factoid that I didn't know, though. In 1942, the book Benita Granville and the Mystery of Star Island by Katherine Heisenfeld was published. This book was part of a series of mystery novels that were pretty reminiscent of Nancy Drew and Nancy Drew's style. This series, though, featured famous actresses from the day. So think like Shirley Temple, Judy Garland, a dozen others as sleuths. So, of course, it's not a true story, but Benita Granville it's her, not as Nancy, but it's just Benita Granville solving a mystery. And
That's
even
so funny.
like even the book itself from the time, I think they're actually still printing it today, but if you find a copy from the time, it looks like the Nancy Drew books from the time, like with the blue and the orange letters and the big font. So I would love to get a hold of that and read that and see what it's like.
That's hilarious. So funny.
Yeah. And then on February 5th, 1947, Benita gets married to Jack Rather, who is a Texas oil millionaire who, got super rich making oil money and then decided, hey, I want to produce movies and I got the money to do that. So he moves to Hollywood, starts producing movies.
Marries a starlet.
Yep. Well, in 1947, he met her on the film of a movie that he was producing. It was called The Guilty. And she was the star. Actually, she was the star twice because she played twins in the movie. And John Littell also was in that movie, or Carson from the Nancy Drew series, which is fun. Jack rather had 2 children from a previous marriage, and he and Benita had 2 more children, Linda and Christopher, both of whom are still alive today. And Linda was a child actress in some of her parents' productions that they made later on, as were Rather's previous 2 children. So upon getting married, Benita informally retires from acting in films and would only star in 3 more movies between 48 and 56. She would also guest star on a few TV shows in the 1950s, but by this time, Benita became heavily involved with the Rather Corporation, which was Jack's movie producing company. And she became a movie producer in her own right. She worked on titles through the 80s on The Lone Ranger and Lassie were some big ones, and her last ever on-screen role was in the 80s as well. I think she was a narrator for one of those productions as well.
Got it. That's really cool.
Isn't it? And then in 1955, so before they got married, Jack, under the Rather Corporation, opened the Disneyland Hotel in California in an exclusive deal with the Walt Disney Company. And this was the first ever hotel to ever bear the name Disney, which is kind of cool. And then, of course, when they got married, Benita assumed ownership as well, and she kind of started this career as a businesswoman. And the couple actually owned several hotels together throughout their marriage. They opened several more. Remember that for later. I know it doesn't sound super relevant to Nancy Drew right now, but remember that one for later.
Oh, okay. Wow. So I know that this is just like a peek into, Hollywood or whatever, and just like in a really weird, like, offside kind of a way.
Yeah.
But this really does just highlight kind of how incestuous the whole business is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Like, everybody knows each other and everyone's involved in everyone's business, and it's all one big money pit.
Big time. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This runs pretty deep. There's a lot of information about Disney tying into Hollywood, and it's crazy. But
fascinating.
And then in 1978, Jack had the Disneyland Hotel expanded to add the Bonita Guest Tower, which is still there today, and he opened a restaurant on the premises as well and called it the Granville Steakhouse, which is no longer there.
Cute.
Isn't that so sweet? I love that.
Oh my God! What if they really loved each other?
I know. I know. I hope they did. That's kind of sweet.
I hope so too. I don't know why. I just always assume that like people get married unhappily. You know what I mean? I don't know why. Especially when there's like money involved. I'm like, oh, I'm sure it wasn't great. And like at the time, I'm like, well, she had to get married. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just all these things, presuppositions run through my mind. But what if they really loved each other?
I know.
He named a tower after her and gave her a restaurant. That's sweet.
Yeah.
In the 70s, too, and that's like 30 years after they got married.
Mm-hmm. And he was only 5 years her senior as well. When I read, like, oil millionaire, I was like, oh, gosh,
like,
how
oh,
old
God.
is this dude? But 5 years is not a big
That's not
age
bad.
difference at the time. Yeah, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then in 1957, we have another one of our canceled projects. CBS ordered a Nancy Drew TV pilot produced by Lucille Ball's production company, Desilu. And this was supposed to star Frankie Thomas Jr. Again, he's our 1938 Ted, and he is 36 years old by this time. But he is supposed to play Carson in this one. And
whoa,
it was supposed to be sort of a continuation of the 38-39 movie, sort of not, because Ned was also supposed to be called Ted in this one. And he was supposed to be played by Tim Considine, who had actually starred as Frank Hardy in the 1955 Disney version of the Hardy Boys TV show. And then Nancy was supposed to be played by a 14-year-old Roberta Shore. So Roberta Shore, she was just starting to try to get her acting career off the ground. She only had 2 credits before she started as Nancy. And she currently has a long list of credits to her name, including the Mickey Mouse Club and the Virginian, which I'm not familiar with, but is supposedly her most popular role. She informally retired from acting at the age of 22 to raise her children, and she is going to turn 80 years old this year.
Wow.
The CBS show was supposed to be titled Nancy Drew Detective, so again, a reference to our 38 movie, but it never made it to air, and it was not picked up for a full series due to a lack of interested sponsors, which is fine because Harriet was reportedly not a fan of this series either.
Of course not. Of course not.
But then in 1960, Bonita gets honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And then in 1972, she was appointed to the Board of Trustees for the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts by Richard Nixon. And then she was appointed for another term again in 82 by Ronald Reagan, who happened to be her co-star in the 1939 movie Angels Wash Their Faces and one of her lifelong friends.
Wow.
Fun fact, Frankie Thomas Jr. co-starred in that movie as well, The Angels Wash Their Faces.
Everyone knows each other.
I know.
This is so weird.
Yeah. And then in 1984, Jack dies of cancer, leaving Benita as their sole owner of the Rather Corporation, which she sold to Disney along with the Disneyland Hotel in 1987. And then sadly, a year later, in October 1988, she dies of lung cancer at the age of 65. And then in 2011, Disney inducted both her and Jack into the Disney Legends. And she would have turned 100 years old if she was still alive this year.
Oh my God.
I know.
Why is that so sad?
No.
My heart. They died within a year of each other.
I know. Oh, no. No. 4 years. He died.
4 years.
And then she still tried to keep the company going for like 3 years and then eventually just couldn't do it. And
I see.
Sold it to Disney. And then a year after that, she died. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
And they're Disney legends?
Yeah. I know. Only 65 years old, but she did so much in her life, you know? She had amazing career. Yeah.
Wow.
She was an amazing woman by all accounts.
That is so cool.
Absolutely gorgeous into her old age as well. If you find pictures of her, she's just as glamorous as she was when she was a younger woman, and yeah.
And I bet she was super rich.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you sell something to Disney, you're making some money off of that, right? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, do you want to take it with our Pamela Sue section here?
Sure. Yeah. So our next Nancy Drew starlet, Pamela Sue Martin. She was born on January 5th in 1953 in Westport, Connecticut. It's so funny. In her junior year of high school, she was working at a hamburger restaurant when her friend encouraged her to follow her to New York City so they could both become models.
Yeah.
So cute. So she dropped out of high school and moved to New York, where she started modeling with her friend, and then she later started auditioning for movies. In 1972, she landed her first film role in To Find a Man, and then she returned to Connecticut to finish high school, and then was almost immediately cast in The Poseidon Adventure, which spent a total of 12 weeks as #1 in the box office and was nominated for 9 Oscars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy shit! Our Nancys are so talented.
I know.
Wow. Season 1, episode 12 of the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mysteries TV show, The Mystery of the Ghostwriters Cruise, pays homage to this movie. Her performance in that movie led her to getting her first leading role in the following year. So cool. So in 1976, producers for ABC approached Harriet Stratemeyer Adams with their idea for a combined Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew TV show, which is, of course, where we know Pamela Sue Martin from. Of course, Harriet was hesitant because of her dislike of the 1930s movies, but she did agree under the condition that she was given full veto power for every script. Jeez Louise. Oh, Harriet. But the producers happily agreed to this, though, and casting directors started their search with Joe, looking for, a quote-unquote young David Cassidy type, which we talked about before. And they found one in David Cassidy's younger brother, Sean, Sean Cassidy. And Sean had already begun his career as a musician. Then they cast 25-year-old Parker Stevenson as Frank, and then they started working on casting Nancy. Jamie Lee Curtis apparently auditioned for this role. That's very cool. But they did, eventually cast Pamela Sue, who was only 24 at the time.
Yeah.
I say only 24. I guess she was playing an 18-year-old.
Yeah. That's believable, though. I think it's fine.
Totally. On January 30th, 1977, the first episode of the Hardy Boys Nancy Drew Mystery airs on the Sunday night 7 p.m. slot on ABC. And the first season, the show alternates between the Hardy Boys and then Nancy Drew episodes every week. The first episode on January 30th was a Hardy Boys episode, and then, Nancy's first episode premiered a week later on February 6th. There's 14 episodes in season 1 of that series, so 7 for Nancy, 7 for the Hardy Boys. That's interesting. A fun fact, the pilot episode was filmed in 1 day, and they filmed for 24 hours straight.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Why?
They needed to
How
get
did
it
you do
done.
this to yourself?
They were trying to rush it
Wow.
so that ABC would pick it up.
I guess, yeah. And Cassidy and Stevenson, who play Frank and Joe, or Joe and Frank, I guess, respectively, met for the first time that morning. And instant chemistry.
I know, isn't that great?
That's crazy. Another fun fact, according to IMDb, some of the episodes were filmed in part on the RMS Queen Mary, which was leased from the city of Long Beach and operated as a hotel by, oh my God, Bonita Granville and Jack Rather.
I know.
What?
I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I was like, wait, what do you mean it was filmed on the Queen Mary? Hold on. I recognize that from researching Bonita Granville because she was in charge of that thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Another interesting fact, the show being on air led to a significant increase in book sales for both Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, of course. And then in 1977, Harriet received her largest yet royalties check from Grosset & Dunlap, which was for just less than $245,000, which is about $740,000 today. Yeah, so that's a successful 6 months, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just less than 4 months after the end of season 1, on September 11th, 1977, season 2 premiered with a 2-part crossover entitled The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew Meet Dracula.
I love that episode. It's so good.
This is the first ever instance of Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys meeting ever. This is before any other crossover books or, games or, of course, whatever, but that's so...
Their fate was realized that they needed to cross over and solve mysteries together.
Of course, this broke, from the structure of season 1. The next episode in the season 2 would just star the Hardy Boys, and then episodes 4 and 5 were more 2-part crossover. Episodes 6 and 9 were... and 11 were just the Hardy Boys. 6 through 9 and 11 were the Hardy Boys only. And then Nancy only had 3 solo episodes that season, which is 10, 12, and 13. And we've talked about this before as well. Of course, after this, Pamela Sue Martin quit. There's a lot of speculation as to why she would have done that, but potentially having those fewer episodes could have been a reason, kind of being relegated to a supporting role character. She was also apparently being paid less than Sean Cassidy and Parker Stevenson, despite, being a titular character. And of course, her desire to do more mature roles. We all remember the Playboy cover.
Oh, that's next. We're getting there. It's in here. Don't worry.
And apparently she and Harriet Stradmeyer Adams kind of butted heads over how, quote unquote, sexy Nancy was allowed to be. Rumor has it that they hated each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So about their pay, Sean Cassidy earned $15,000 a week. Yikes. Which is $76,000 today. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a big check. But because of the massive success of the show's merchandise, they sold lunchboxes and watches and posters and clothes and a bunch of other stuff. He earned the vast majority of the money from this show from merch alone. We don't have any information on Pamela Sue Martin's earnings, but if it was less than that, and probably less enough for her to be pretty peeved about it,
it's understandable. Yeah.
Right. But regardless of the ratings, this show, of course, was hugely popular with Nancy Drew fans, then and now.
Yeah.
So we definitely consider this one of the best ever adaptations of Nancy. And many fans also consider Pamela Sue Martin's portrayal of Nancy to be the best thus far. And I
absolutely agree.
Definitely do.
Yes.
I agree. 100% I agree. So, speaking of ratings, ABC wanted the show to compete with other big shows in the same time slot, like 60 Minutes and The Wonderful World of Disney on different networks, two of the highest rated, TV shows of all time. Um, the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys show did have good ratings, but it couldn't quite meet the bar that, ABC set for it and that it wanted it to achieve. So,
How do you outdo 60 Minutes on ratings?
I
I'm
don't
sorry.
know.
Like, it's just
That seems crazy.
for what is almost effectively a children's show, definitely a family show, I would say. So it's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it was too high of a bar. Yeah.
Definitely. On February 12th, 1978, Nancy Drew returns to the show for the two-part crossover episode Voodoo Doll, but this time portrayed by Janet Louise Johnson. She appeared as Nancy in 4 total episodes of season 2, all of which were crossovers with the Hardy Boys. Following the end of season 2, the decision was made to cut Nancy from the show entirely, and it was renamed The Hardy Boys for season 3, of course, because no Nancy. And then, of course, ratings declined from there, and then the show was canceled after 10 episodes, which we know. The final episode aired January 14th, 1979, and then after the cancellation, ABC's ratings dropped dramatically, and the network executives later said it was one of the worst decisions of their careers. Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just a little bit of information on Janet Louise Johnson. She was 18 years old, so, a few years younger than Pamela Sue when she played Nancy. She was born on July 10th, 1959 in Illinois, and this show was her big break, and she later appeared as guest stars in other various mystery TV series like Columbo, Murder, She Wrote, and Diagnosis Murder. Oh my god, I used to watch Diagnosis Murder!
She was in that.
Wow!
I know.
She stopped acting in 1995 to focus on raising her 3 kids, and she later became a parent educator and a teacher. She's currently known by her married name, Janet Lansbury, and is a child care and parenting expert, and apparently has written many articles and has a podcast. And she's going to be 64 in 2023. That's cool. In July of 1978, a few months after her departure from the show, Pamela Sue, to the, of course, absolute horror of Harriet Stratemeyer Adams, posed for Playboy in character as Nancy Drew. She's featured on the cover of the issue wearing a trench coat and holding a magnifying glass, accompanied by the words, Nancy Drew Undraped.
Yeah.
And in the interview for the magazine, she discussed her fear that being associated with Nancy Drew would lead to her being typecast as sweet, innocent characters forever, while, of course, Pamela Sue had ambitions for more mature and edgier roles. And she also just expressed her frustrations over the structure of the second season of the show, which makes sense. And of course, she continued acting after leaving Nancy Drew, most notably from 1981 to 84 as the character Fallon Carrington Colby in Dynasty. She won a Bambi Award for this role in 1984 and continued to appear in TV and movies after this and hosted the February 16th, 1985 episode of Saturday Night Live. A little bit of personal information. She's been married and divorced 3 times. She has 1 son, Nicholas Allen, from her 3rd marriage. Following the birth of her son, she took a break from acting in 1991 to travel the U.S. in her Volkswagen van and spend time with her family.
She's great, isn't she?
Yes. In 2002, she returned to acting with a guest appearance on That 70s Show, and has done a few other TV shows and movies since then. During this time, she also worked as the director of a theater group in Idaho. In 2019, many of us know that she played the character Harriet Grosset, a medium in the pilot episode of the CW's Nancy Drew TV show starring Kennedy McMahon. And of course, this is a reference to Harriet Stratemeyer and Grosset and Dunlap. Currently, Pamela Sue is an environmental and preservation activist and philanthropist and spokesperson for Greenpeace and a wild horse sanctuary. I didn't know that.
She loves wild animals, apparently.
Wow. And she turned 70 just in January of this year.
Alrighty. So the next section here is Tracy Ryan's portrayal of Nancy Drew. But before we get to Tracy, we have to talk about Margot Kidder and the attempt to start a Nancy Drew TV show just a few years prior. So in 1989, the Canadian production studio Nelvana ordered 13 episodes of a show called Nancy Drew and Daughter. And this was supposed to star Margot Kidder and her real-life daughter Maggie McGuane in the starring roles. Margot Kidder was born October 17th, 1948 in Canada and was best known for portraying Lois Lane in the Superman movie franchise from 1978 to 87. In December of 1990, while filming the first episode of the series, Margot was actually in a car accident on set, which resulted in a pretty severe spinal injury and led to her being partially paralyzed. It also, of course, had severe mental impacts on her mental health, as you might be able to imagine. And this story is actually really sad. I don't know how much you know about Margot Kidder's life.
A little.
Okay.
I only know because of the reference that they made to her in Gilmore Girls.
Oh, okay.
And looking it up based on
I don't remember what that
Gilmore Girls.
What that reference was.
She made a reference to someone looking like wide-eyed Margot Kidder in a bush.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's just a little not great, but yeah.
Nelvana actually refused to compensate her for the damages. I believe that she sued them for like workers' compensation and then ended up losing, or no, she sued them to like get the compensation for damages, but then lost the court case. And then that resulted in her being ineligible for workers' comp or something to that effect. So, I don't know too much about the fault here, but it kind of seems like they did her dirty and not supporting her in her like physical recovery following this and her mental health recovery, because it's just, this is a horrible situation. So bad, in fact, that the project had to be canceled because she wasn't able to work for years after this. Had the series been made, this would have been our oldest Nancy yet. Margot was 42 at the time and her daughter Maggie was 15. And sadly, she died by suicide in 2018. Her daughter Maggie is currently 46 years old and works as a writer now. So really, really horrible story. Would have been an interesting show, though. I'd like to know more about the premise, but oh well. Moving on here, though, February 8th, 1971, Tracy Ryan is born in Ontario, Canada, and she majored in drama and Irish studies at the University of Toronto, and then in 1993 got her big break in the TV show Family Passions. Then September 23rd, 1995, the first episode of Nancy Drew, starring 24-year-old Tracy, airs. Like the failed 1990 show, this is also produced by the Canadian studio Nelvana, and this rendition featured a 21-year-old Nancy who is a criminology major in New York City. The series was actually inspired by the Files book series, which is kind of fun. Although there's no, like I said, I just finished watching it last night. There's no murders or anything like that in it. These were only 30-minute episodes in a not so primetime slot on Saturdays. And I believe it aired on the WB here in the US. But they really had to like cram these movies into these episodes because they were so short. Like it's one of those, it doesn't even feel like procedural, which I really liked about it. It doesn't feel super formulaic. It feels like, I don't know, kind of feels like you're reading a file that's extremely, extremely condensed. But it's one of those where like you have to pay attention to everything because they only have so much time. So everything is important and you never know how it's going to play in. So that's kind of fun. I like that aspect of it.
I feel like I remember watching the pilot episode of this like a long time ago, but I don't remember liking it.
Really? Okay.
But
they don't even really have time to like introduce more than one suspect in a lot of cases, but a lot of the mysteries are not super complicated, you know? Like it's like, who is that guy that ran out in front of my car? And then Nancy ends up finding him. And then that's it, you know, like that's the pilot. So yeah. Ned's only in like 3 or 4 episodes of this though, which is kind of nice. So that's good. And I really like the Bess and George portrayal on this is really fun. I think the Nancy, Bess, and George dynamic is probably one of the truest adaptations to the books.
I'll have to rewatch it.
It's pretty good. I liked it. But fun fact, Nelvana also produced a Hardy Boys TV show at the same time, and the two shows aired back to back the same night. And unfortunately, the ratings for both shows were so low that they were canceled mid-season, and each show only had 13 episodes each. But they did attempt to do a little bit of a crossover with this as well. Tracy did star as Nancy in the final 2 episodes of the Hardy Boys show, although the Hardy Boys didn't appear in any of the Nancy Drew episodes. That's fine. I haven't seen the Hardy Boys show at all, so I'll have to watch
Yeah.
that to see if it's comparable to the Nancy Drew show. But
Sure.
the final episode for both of these did air on December 16th, 1995. And another fun fact for you here, the current Hardy Boys TV show that started in 2020 that's now on Hulu is also a Nelvana show, so which I didn't know.
Wow. I didn't know that either. Sounds like Nelvana knows what they're about.
They kind of do. But Tracy Ryan is actually still acting today and has been in many, many, many TV shows and movies since Nancy Drew. In 2003, she married Bruce McCullough, who is also an actor. He's done a lot of things. We were just talking about Gilmore Girls. If y'all know Gilmore Girls, he was Tobin on that show, who is the night manager
my God.
at the inn. He's done a whole bunch of other things. I think he used to also be a writer for Saturday Night Live, and he had his own sketch comedy show for a while. But
Yeah.
big name actor, and they have 2 children. And Tracy turned 52 this year.
Wow. Everyone knows each other.
It's great.
This is so weird. Wow.
Do you want to take Maggie here?
Yes, I want to take Maggie, my favorite. I love Maggie Lawson. I mean, all of our actresses are great, and I have a great soft spot in my heart for all of them, but Maggie Lawson is my
She's
favorite.
incredible. I love her.
Because I love her so much. Probably because it's like a childhood nostalgia kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in a lot of TV shows, that I watched and liked, so Maggie Lawson. She was born on August 12th, 1980 in Kentucky and began acting in her local community theater at 8 years old. And then she moved to LA at only 15 to appear in her first TV show, Unhappily Ever After. Of course, she would appear in 18 more TV shows and movies before her time as Nancy, including Home Improvement and Boy Meets World. Love Boy Meets World. In 2002, January, ABC orders a pilot of a Nancy Drew TV show intended to air in the 02-03 season. And this movie would depict 18-year-old Nancy starting out at River Heights University as a journalism major and subsequently stumbling upon a mystery. Auditions for the role of Nancy began in February of that year, and Maggie Lawson beat out Rachel McAdams, Christine Larkin, and other actresses for the role. They started filming the pilot over a couple weeks in March 2002 and intended to air this movie in fall of 2002. But ABC decided instead to test their luck with it as a mid-season replacement and push the release to January of 2003. They ordered 6 more scripts, and the cast were given contracts for a spring 2003 season. But they changed their mind. In May 2002, ABC decided to air the Nancy Drew pilot as a movie on The Wonderful World of Disney to test reception. The film was dedicated to Mildred Wirt Benson, who died in May that year. So then it does, on December 15th in 2002, it does air at 7 p.m. and 7.5 million people watched it, which was pretty good. But reviews apparently for it were not super positive. There's an excerpt from a review in Variety that says, while the character may have evergreen appeal in theory, the execution here by director James Frawley feels like it's stuck in some netherworld. He would have us believe here that an inspiring pep talk or a heart-tugging speech is still all that's needed to turn grievous wrongs into a triumphant victory. Mann's script tries to be timely with college athletes and drug abuse, but except for a few arguments with her father, this version feels more like a fantasy throwback with a few nods to modern life via coffee houses and cell phones. Lawson has the clean-cut go-getter style of a 21st century Nancy, but her version of the she-Sherlock appears to be driven by self-interest rather than the desire to help the greater good.
That's arguable. Okay.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I also don't know that that's a fairly accurate read on original Nancy Drew either.
Yeah.
I
Very
think
true.
her interests were pretty self-serving. Anyway, but her Nancy is independent and resourceful, but she's also a big pain in the ass. Daddy Drew, played by Brett Cullen, receives a much-needed makeover and gives the story its most credibility. Any chance of resurrecting the mystery franchise, however, will need some serious rethinking. And so rethinking they did. Because in January 2003, ABC decided to go ahead and cancel all future plans for more episodes or movies starring Maggie. But in 2003, the film was nominated for a Prism Award. So
Couldn't have done that badly.
somebody liked it. Like, I liked it. Come on, Disney.
I liked it too.
Just like a few reviewers. I just feel like that's just such a cheap way to decide the future of your network. Like, anyway.
I mean, it had a lot of viewers as well when it first aired, so it couldn't have been. I mean, whatever. That's all right.
Whatever. So, of course, Maggie moved on, and in 2006 began starring in the role for which she is most famous, which is Detective Juliet O'Hara on Psych. And that, of course, ran until 2014, so very long-running TV show. And she did reprise her role in 3 Psych movies, the most recent of which was released just last year. Or no, not last year. 2 years ago, 2021. Welcome to the present year, Becky. Maggie also dated her Psych co-star James Roday Rodriguez, who played Sean for the entire run of the show, 2006 to 2014. Wow. She's been married once and got divorced in 2017. And of course, she, continues to act today and currently co-hosts a Psych Rewatch podcast with Timothy Amundsen, who played Detective Carlton Lassiter on the show, titled The Psychologists Are In. Just very cute. And Maggie will be 43 later this year. Aww.
I know.
I love Maggie.
Me too. She's wonderful. I love Psych as well. I mean,
Psych is so good. I never really watched the show faithfully, but I've seen many episodes and they are always good. They're always excellent.
I did watch the first few seasons pretty faithfully. The last few seasons, I was like, I kind of forgot it was still on, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, what's that, like 10 years?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. 8 years?
8 years. That's a long time.
It's a long TV show.
Good run. Just speaks to how good it was. So.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, moving on here to Miss Emma Roberts. I almost said Emma Watson just now. Okay, anyway.
There's lots of Emmas.
There are.
Out there.
February 10th, 1991, she was born in New York State to a family full of actors and musicians. Of course, a lot of you might already know her paternal aunt is Julia Roberts. She landed her first movie role in 2001, and from 2004 to 2007, she had her own starring role in a Nickelodeon show called Unfabulous.
I watched that religiously.
Yeah. I don't know that I ever watched it, actually.
I just remember she played the guitar, and the little theme song was, "Better on Fabulous, oh yeah."
Oh, okay. I think she had a little bit of a Nickelodeon-inspired music career after that as well.
Probably.
Then, of course, we get into her time as Nancy, but it actually goes back all the way to the early 1990s because Warner Brothers had been kind of toying with the idea of making another Nancy Drew movie since then, but it did take until 2006 to actually get the ball rolling on this when they finally started casting for the role. Amanda Bynes actually auditioned, but they passed over her for a then 16-year-old Emma was chosen for the role, and filming went from January to April of 2006.
That would have been interesting.
I know, right? And Amanda Bynes. I mean, she was doing a lot of these types of movies at the time, so I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd gone with her, but Emma was a good choice, I think, for what this movie was. So
Amanda Bynes is probably too busy.
Probably. Honestly, yeah. Well, then on June 15th, 2007, the movie does premiere. It's the story of a 16-year-old Nancy stumbling upon a murder case involving the missing will of a famous actress. The movie is set in modern day, but they do have a lot of nods to like our original character of Nancy. Emma Roberts, for this, she only dresses in like vintage style clothing. She like makes a point to prefer like analog things over anything digital, and she drives like a classic 1960s car. This was, of course, an attempt to make her more like the classic character from the books, but in reality, it made her more of just like an outcast with her modern day peers. It didn't really have the effect that I think that they were going for, but reviews, though, were definitely not great for this movie. It only got a 51% on Rotten Tomatoes, with other outlets not rating it very much higher than that. It didn't do too poorly, though. The film had a budget of $20 million and earned a total of $30 million in the box office. Fun fact, Emma did not yet have her driver's license when they were filming this movie, so she didn't actually do any of the driving in that classic car. And she did sign on to make a sequel before this movie was ever even released, but likely because of the lower ratings, it never got made, of course. This movie ends with a teaser for a sequel, though, so they did set it up to try to do that. Nancy, at the end, gets a call for asking for her help on a mystery in Scotland, but of course, obviously, that never got made. They did make a novelization of the movie, though, and it was released in the same year, same title, just Nancy Drew. And it did get nominated for a number of awards. So there was 2 Australian Kids' Choice Awards, 2 Teen Choice Awards, and 3 Young Artists Awards that this movie was nominated for. And I don't know if it won any of those, actually, but that's still pretty cool. And fun fact, Jennifer Fisher, who some of you might recognize that name, she's the president of the Nancy Drew Sleuths fan club. She has, what is her website? Just nancydrewexpert.com or something. NancyDrewSleuths.com. She owns a few different websites actually relating to Nancy. She also plans the Nancy Drew convention every year, but she actually served as the Nancy Drew consultant for this movie.
Yeah, very cool.
As of today, some more of Emma's personal life here. She has a total of 40 credits to her name, with 4 more in production or planned for upcoming in the next couple of years here. Some notable titles for her movies in the past include Scream 4, We're the Millers, and Holiday, and she's also been in some TV shows like American Horror Story and Scream Queens. She attended Sarah Lawrence College for 1 year in 2011, and then in December 2020, she was the first ever pregnant woman to appear on the cover of Cosmopolitan. Her son with her now ex-boyfriend was born later that month, and she's a pretty accomplished actress now. As we said, she's done a ton of things. She's been nominated for over 30 awards in her career and has won 7 of those, and she just turned 32 years old this year.
Wow. I didn't even know she had a child.
I didn't either until I saw this, but...
Okay. Sophia Lillis is great. I do have to say.
Mm-hmm.
She's fascinating.
She's got a lot under her belt for this early in her career as well.
She does. She's quite young. She was born on February 13th in 2002.
Oh, that hurts. That hurts to hear those words.
I know. Oh, so successful, so much younger than us. She was born in New York City. Her first acting role was a stage production of A Midsummer Night's Dream, and she did her first movie in 2016. In 2017, she landed a lead role in Stephen King's It, and then later also starred in the sequel. She's also been in other notable things like Sharp Objects, which is excellent TV show.
It is.
I love it so much. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. And I Am Not Okay with This, which I've also seen on Netflix. Yeah. In April of 2018, she was cast as Nancy when she was 16 years old. Ellen DeGeneres was a producer of the film, which was then distributed by Warner Brothers, of course, who still owns the rights. And Sam Trammell, who is best known for his handsomeness. Thank you for putting that in there, Kori. Yes. Is best known for his handsomeness and his role in True Blood. He was also in The Fault in Our Stars.
Oh, of course. Yes. How did I forget that
one? He was cast as Nancy's father, Carson. It premiered on March 15th in 2019, and of course, we talked about this. It's met to mixed reviews. Nancy is, her original 16-year-old self in the film, which was, of course, intended for a little bit of a younger audience. It's still set in modern day, and Nancy is just way more, daring is a nice word. Delinquent is another word.
She is arrested twice, isn't she? In one movie?
Well, arrested once, convicted once.
Okay, well...
in one movie, but they talk about her previously.
True.
So she's, a little bit more daring than, other Nancys that we might be used to. But of course, all of her actions are in the name of justice. So everybody, praised Sophia's portrayal of Nancy, but with plenty of criticism given to the actual mystery plot. Received a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes and a score of 55 on Metacritic. So one of the reviews from the AV Club says this: This is not a series that requires the big budget blockbuster treatment, and the modesty of the production allows for Lilith to strike a real world likability. She wears the flannel and the skateboard. They don't wear her. The movie itself, though, is less diligent than the teen detective hero it attempts to reintroduce. The screenplay can barely be bothered to think of exacting, exciting details for Nancy to ferret out in her sleuthing, much less the particulars of its aesthetic or sensibility, which turn out to be virtually non-existent. Ouch. It's a watchably low-key family adventure, but that's a low bar to clear for Nancy Drew.
Ouch.
That's true. It's
watchable.
That's a dig. That is accurate. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
The true ones cut the worst. The movie had a budget of $17 million, but earned a total of only $600,000 in the box office. So that is bad news.
Yeah.
Of course, it ends with a teaser for a potential sequel when Helen invites Nancy, Bess, and George to go with her to the Lilac Inn. So that's a good point that you made. If they still plan to do this in spite of the low ticket sales for the first one, COVID, which happened right after that, probably threw a wrench in any way.
So probably not going to happen at this point, but
no,
oh well.
No, of course, yeah. Sophia just turned 21 and is, currently working on 3 new movies, which are going to be released this year.
And I'm sure has an amazing career ahead of her because, gosh, already she's amazing.
Clearly very talented. Okay, you want to take Kennedy?
Okay, yes, of course, now it is time to move on to Miss Kennedy McMahon. But before we can do that, we do have to talk about a couple other attempts to get this show made that ended up resulting in the current show that we know today. So in October 2015, CBS announced that it was beginning to work on a Nancy Drew TV show. In January 2016, they gave the show the title Drew and ordered a pilot episode. Then 35-year-old Sarah Shahi was cast as Nancy, and the pilot was filmed in March 2016. It was actually leaked online. It was quickly removed, but I did watch it.
I miss it!
I know, I can't find a copy anymore, so if you guys know where to find it, it was on the Wayback Machine. The link is taken down now, it's broken, so you can't find it anymore that I know of, but if you guys know where to find it, please send it to us, because
send it to me.
Becky needs to watch this.
I need to see it.
A little bit about Sarah here. She was born on January 10th, 1980 in Euless, Texas, and she graduated from Southern Methodist University. And was actually a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader before she began her acting career. Actually, her first acting credit was as an extra in a film in the year 2000. Obviously, this seemed to be a big interest for her. So after she gets that role, she quickly moves to Hollywood and currently has a long, long list of credits to her name, including Fairly Legal, Person of Interest, Black Adam, and her current role in a Netflix show called Sex Life. In 2010, she actually guest starred in an episode of Psych alongside former Nancy Drew, Maggie Lawson.
No way! Everyone knows each other! So weird.
Let's see. She's actually, she has 3 children with her now ex-husband, Steve Howey, which if y'all have seen Shameless, he plays Kevin in that show. I don't know if you've seen Shameless, but
I've seen bits of it. Yeah.
He's the neighbor of the main family.
Okay.
But they have 3 children together, but they are divorced now, and she's currently dating her co-star in her current show, Sex Life. But in this adaptation, so a little bit of the summary here, because I did watch it. I'm just going to do this very briefly, but I did take more detailed notes on this. If anybody cares, message me and I'd be happy to talk with y'all about this, especially if y'all have seen this, because I want to know y'all's thoughts on this as well, because I know a few people in the Nancy Drew community got the chance to see it before the link was taken down. But anyway, so Nancy is supposed to be 30 years old in this adaptation, and she's actually just recently left the NYPD after she was sued by a photographer. She wrongfully accused the photographer of the murder of his assistant, so it was like this big deal, and Nancy was like so embarrassed by wrongfully accusing him that she ended up stepping down. It was very much a formulaic, procedural CBS type detective mystery show featuring, the one mystery per episode that's kind of shorter. And then we had the larger season long arc as well. So for the pilot episode, the shorter mystery just for this episode is that Bess has recently died. And I don't like that they kill Bess off and just solve her murder right away.
Oh my God.
But they do. It was actually ruled as suicide. But Nancy, just throughout the whole episode, she can't shake this feeling that it was murder. And she's also dealing with trauma over it because it happened when she was still a police officer and she was the responding officer at the scene. So she starts investigating with the help of George, who was previously her NYPD partner, and George is still on the NYPD, and she actually is engaged to a woman named Stephanie, we learn.
Yes!
Yes!
Woohoo!
Finally!
Finally! Oh.
We also meet her ex, Ned, who is a reporter. Thank goodness her ex. Yes, I like that part of it.
And a reporter. Like, that tracks.
I like that.
Okay.
Absolutely. We see Nancy go home to River Heights to follow up on a lead in Bess's case, where we meet Hannah, who is an awesome character. I love the portrayal of Hannah in this one. And then we also see Carson as well, and his new girlfriend, who is pregnant. Yeah. We also learn that Nancy is adopted in this one as well.
Oh. Huh.
Nancy discovers, though, in the course of her investigation, that not only was Bess in the process of opening her own restaurant at the time of her death, but she was also pregnant as well.
Lots of babies.
Yeah. So she goes, the investigation goes a little bit longer. She and George look at a few different angles in this, and eventually they learn that the people that Bess was in business with murdered her because she caught them, like, stealing from the company and doing all this shady business, so they killed her to get her out of the way. Eventually they confess with this, like, big dramatic scene on the rooftop, and Nancy, like, confronts them, and they do get arrested in the end. And then by the end of the episode, Nancy attends George's wedding, and we get this, like, really sweet little speech from Nancy. But then at the wedding, she also runs into her former police captain, who agrees to let her rejoin the force, so effectively, like, setting up the rest of the season here.
Right.
And then in the final scene of the episode, we do get a shot of that photographer from the beginning who Nancy wrongfully accused. We see him stashing away evidence that actually he did murder the assistant. And then he leaves, and he's, like, going to go interview another woman for his assistant position. So effectively, like, setting up our season-long arc here that Nancy is going to go, like, rejoin the force and catch this serial killer that she's already kind of had her eye on.
Listen, I haven't even seen this, and I have thoughts now that you've shared all this with me.
Okay.
How it would have been so easy for them to make Bess the assistant of this photographer.
Right.
Why didn't they just do that?
I hate that they, like, if you're going to kill Bess, make it worth it and make it, like, a whole season thing.
Make it a season-long arc.
Because now Bess is just dead.
Make this Helen or something. I don't care. Just not Bess.
I know. But I actually really enjoyed this. I mean, again, it is one of those formulaic procedural police shows. We've got a million of those. Just because we slap the name Nancy Drew on it doesn't necessarily make it Nancy Drew. She's also, I'm sure you've seen the BBC Sherlock, where he's, like, super analytical and just can, like, read a whole situation in 1 second. Nancy is that in this as well. She can look at a person and tell you exactly where they're going, what they've been doing that day, and why they're acting so weird. Another fun fact, the police station that was used for the set of the police station in the pilot episode was the same set that they used in the CBS show Elementary, which was also a Sherlock Holmes adaptation starring Johnny Lee Miller and Lucy Liu, which I instantly recognized because I was obsessed with that show. So I thought that was kind of fun. But CBS did later pass on the pilot in favor of picking up a legal drama for that season instead, which that got canceled after, like, half a season anyway. So whatever.
Oh, man.
Yeah. But then in October 2017, the same creators from that Drew show heavily reworked the show in order to try to get it picked up by NBC instead. So they pretty much scrapped everything from that pilot. And in this version, they make Nancy, Bess, and George much older, probably around, like, their 40s or 50s, somewhere in that range. And the premise is that Nancy is now a mystery author who has written books about her own life. And Bess and George aren't super happy with how they're portrayed in the novels. I don't know if that means that, like, Nancy played up her own contributions and, like, downplayed their help in the mysteries, or if they didn't like Bess being fat shamed the entire time. I don't know what specifically they had the issue with, but essentially the premise of this is that they are now working on repairing their friendship after having drifted apart because of that, and that leads them back to solving mysteries together.
That's kind of cute.
Yeah, it would have been interesting. I mean, again, we lose that, like, young detective who is defying the police expectations to solve things faster than everyone else, and it's very different, but it could have been a cool idea.
We've never had anything like that before. We've never had an older Nancy Drew.
Right. Sadly, though, NBC did pass on the show, and it got reworked and then changed hands and then reworked again. And then this happened many, many, many times before finally ending up in the lap of the CW.
Ah, yes.
So that leads us to October 30th, 1996, when Kennedy McMahon is born. Actually, she was born to 2 writers, and her mother, Lisa McMahon, is a mystery author. Fun fact.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Kennedy majored in acting at Carnegie Mellon and graduated in 2018. She had 2 TV show guest stars before being cast as Nancy, but those were her only real big credits. But then in February 2019, she was cast as Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
September 2018, CW orders the pilot episode of Nancy Drew and announced that Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage are going to develop the show. Like I said, casting began in early 2019. Actually, Freddie Prinze Jr. was originally cast as Carson, but he later dropped out and was replaced with Scott Wolf. And then Pamela Sue Martin was cast for that cameo in the pilot episode around this same time as well. Then October 9th, 2019, Nancy Drew airs on CBS in a 9 p.m. Wednesday time slot, starring Kennedy, who is about to turn 23 years old. Nancy's character in this adaptation she turns 19 years old in the first season, and the idea is that she is taking this gap year after finishing high school. In this adaptation, she lives in Horseshoe Bay, Maine, and works at a seafood restaurant called the Bayside Claw. Her mother, Kate, died of cancer just a year prior. So Nancy's actively grieving throughout the show, and that's a big component of it. Ned, for whatever reason, was changed to Nick in this version of the show. George Fan, not George Fane, George Fan is the manager of the Claw and is not at all related to Bess Marvin, who's also a waitress at the Claw, and is British for whatever reason. They also add some new characters to the show, such as Ace, who fans heavily speculate is going to later be revealed as a Hardy Boy. Theories online began to circulate when they realized that Ace's last name is never mentioned. He's got this father who's a police detective.
Mm-hmm.
And the Hardy Boys, fans also noticed, the Hardy Boys was going to enter the public domain on January 1st of this year, 2023. So they thought, hey, maybe they're just buying their time until then. And then in the next season, which is going to air later this year, maybe they will reveal that actually his name is Ace Hardy or Joe Hardy. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
He's blonde, but who knows what we're going to see this year now that the Hardy Boys are in the public domain officially.
Mm-hmm.
This show does have a supernatural twist with plenty of ghosts and hauntings and all that kind of fun stuff. Beth starts practicing witchcraft in the third season, I think. So that's kind of interesting.
I'm a fan of that.
Yeah, I like that part as well. Beth gets really into it. I'm I want a show of just this. I just want to see Beth Marvin practicing witchcraft to get rid of the haunts in town. Yes.
Yeah.
The show was met with mixed reactions from fans. Every time I talk to somebody about this, they either absolutely love the show or absolutely hate it. Some people love it for how it presents this more mature, complex Nancy, and others criticize it for deviating too much from the original character and the original books that we know, and for incorporating the supernatural elements. A lot of people do not like that aspect of it. The show is often likened to Riverdale, at least by me, which is another CW supernatural teen drama.
Yeah.
It only has a 53% on Rotten Tomatoes and a score of 55 on Metacritic, and there were a total of 18 episodes in season 1. Writers incorporated a ton of references to the books and the Stratemeyer Syndicate in the show, which I appreciated. Nancy investigates Keene High School, and you always see a stack of yellow spines in the background anytime they go to a library, all fun stuff like that. March 2020, they released a novelization of the show called Nancy Drew the Curse, which is supposed to act as a prequel to the events of season 1. Some personal information here about Kennedy. Get ready to sob. In a November 2020 Instagram post, she revealed that she and her long-term boyfriend Sam had eloped and that they had future plans for a larger post-COVID wedding celebration. The two actually met in college and have a dog and 2 cats together. And Scott Wolf, who plays Carson in the show, actually walked Kennedy down the aisle because her own parents were unable to be there because of COVID.
Oh my gosh.
Just the mental image of Carson walking Nancy down the aisle, and I'm crying, and it's not even to someone named Ned, thank goodness. And I just think that is absolutely adorable.
That is really sweet.
I mean, the cast has like gotten to be like actually close in real life, so
Sure.
it's just so sweet.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Kennedy has been really open about her own mental health struggles and her OCD diagnosis herself. And in a June 2021 Instagram post, she revealed that the Nancy Drew writers actually allowed her to have a good deal of input on how Nancy is portrayed and how her trauma is portrayed in the show and how it's dealt with. She said in the post that that it was really important to her that Nancy has control of her own trauma narrative, but isn't held back or defined by it. So I just thought that was really cool that like Kennedy had input on how Nancy is written in the show. And
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome because I don't know of any other case where that was the case in the past,
Sure.
or any other movie where that was the case, or TV show.
Yeah.
Going back to the timeline here, though, January 20th of 2021, season 2 begins airing, and it had 18 episodes in this season. Season 2, episode 7 introduced the Bobbsey twins to the show, and episode 15 introduced the character Tom Swift, which is, of course, another Stratemeyer Syndicate title. This episode actually served as the backdoor pilot for a spinoff, which was also titled Tom Swift. Unfortunately, that show had very low viewership and was canceled after just 10 episodes. But for this season, the first episode of this season marked a very important milestone for the show because it was now the longest running Nancy Drew TV show ever.
Ooh, 2 seasons.
Well, the 1977 show featured Nancy in a total of 18 episodes across 2 seasons. So it did have 2 seasons. So if we include the crossovers, that's 18 total episodes. So season 2, episode 1 marked 19 episodes. And of course, the 1995 show only had 13 episodes with the 2 Hardy Boy crossover episodes total as well. So that's kind of fun. And then in October of 2021, just 4 months after the end of season 2, they start airing season 3. And for this season, they moved the show to a 9 p.m. on Friday time slot rather than the Wednesday time slot. And there were only 13 episodes in season 3. Then in March of 2022, the CW announced that Nancy Drew had been renewed for its 4th and final season. Filming wrapped on December 17th of last year, and it's set to air on May 31st of this year, 2023. And the final episode is going to air on August 23rd, meaning that there will probably also be 13 episodes in that season. So if that's the case, that will bring the total episode count for the show to 62. And then in January of 2023, Kennedy announced that she'd been cast in the main role of a spinoff of the show The Good Doctor, which is going to be titled The Good Lawyer, which is going to be about a lawyer with OCD. And Kennedy is going to turn 27 this year.
That's exciting.
I know. Good for her.
Congratulations, Kennedy. Yeah.
Of course, this brings us up to present day now, but we cannot go without talking about a little bit more here about the future. You want to take it with the musical?
Yes. So in October in 2018, Playbill announced that they were going to make Nancy Drew the musical for Broadway. Simon & Schuster commissioned Jeff Thompson to write the music and Jeffrey Desmond to write the lyrics for the show, which is supposed to star Nancy in her 60s, her daughter Diane Nickerson, and then her granddaughter. And then, the 3 women are supposedly estranged, and they take a cruise together and attempt to reconcile, where they stumble across a mystery. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of information online about this project. But yeah, Playbill's announcement indicated that there was going to be a live reading of the show done by Judy McLean as Nancy and Betsy Wolfe as her daughter Diane. And we found something on YouTube about, you have that down below. Okay.
Yeah.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Just a month later, in November, Thompson and Desmond released 6 songs from the musical on their website, rewritemusicals.com. And though it doesn't state who performed the songs titles are Nancy Freakin' Drew, Not Bad for a Girl, Off She Goes, I Would Never, Stuck With Me, and Find Your Light. In November of the following year, in 2019, the National Coalition Against Censorship hosted a live performance in New York City of 2 of the songs from the musical, Not Bad for a Girl, which is sung by Nancy's character, and Find Your Light, sung by Diane's character. And videos of the performance were posted on YouTube, and I have seen them, and they are very weird.
They are weird.
I don't know how to describe it. It wasn't weird for me for the performance that it was, because I understood it was just, a performance of some of the songs, but the songs themselves are not, I don't know, this didn't feel like Nancy Drew to me.
Yeah.
It was weird. But anyway. The actresses performing in these videos weren't credited in the video description, but they don't appear to be McLean and Wolf. It's interesting. We don't know who they are. The description just says that the musical is a co-production by Simon & Schuster and Revelo Imaginations, who have a long-standing partnership. In 2021, Revelo Imaginations lists Nancy Drew in the Case of the Vanishing Ruby as an upcoming show on its website, but the more information button is a broken link.
Yeah.
So, dang it!
Yeah, I know.
There was previously a Hardy Boys production listed on the page, but that's no longer there. But, around that time there was COVID, so the production probably had to pause, and there's no new information, so it's probably not happening.
Well, until you read the next part here.
Oh God. Oh, what?
Okay.
So in December, you read this part.
Yes. Okay. So I've looked. I actually contacted the guys that Simon & Schuster hired to write the music and lyrics, and they did not respond to me. But then in December of 2022, Jennifer Fisher posted the following on her Facebook page, implying that work is possibly still being done on the play. So this is a quote from her. 2023 looks to be a great year for Nancy Drew fans. There's a super fun project coming up with something that's never been done before for Nancy Drew, so I've appreciatively been able to be a part of that, and I can't wait for that to launch soon. There's an upcoming immersive tour that may debut later in 2023. Oh my gosh, we need to go to that. And possibilities with Nancy Drew Broadway play still being in the works. We'll see how that progresses, but the new revamped treatment and team behind it is amazing. There's more, but I can't say much now, so I'll leave it as a curious cliffhanger to be continued in 2023, but as soon as I can talk about it, you'll all get the scoop. So, something is happening. We just don't know if it's still the same team that had been announced as previous. We don't know if any of those songs that are online are, still going to make it into the final production. We don't even know if the premise is still the same. But supposedly this is happening, y'all. So maybe we need to go to New York when this premieres just so that we can see it on Broadway because, oh my gosh.
100% do. Oh my God.
I know. Oh my gosh.
My heart just started beating so fast. Oh, okay. The amount of hype I would have, not just for a musical version of Nancy Drew, but like just any play adaptation would be just like so excited.
I know.
I gotta keep it in check. The thing is, okay, I do want to talk about Nancy Drew adaptations in general because I just feel like it's just so disappointing.
Yeah. It's hard to do a Nancy Drew adaptation right.
But like, what is the problem? Do you understand my question? Like, it feels like everybody wants to do it. Everybody's been doing them.
Mm-hmm.
They're popular. It's like people are interested. People watch them. All that stuff, but then just something just isn't right and just never clicks, and it's disappointing. And I don't know if it's just like not understanding like the fan base correctly or like what people are actually like looking for in a Nancy Drew adaptation that causes a lot of them to fall flat.
Right.
But it's just every single one, it feels like nobody gets it.
Yeah. It always seems like they're trying to do Nancy Drew, but with a twist. Oh, it's Nancy Drew, but it's modern day. It's Nancy Drew, but she's older. It's Nancy Drew, but she has a skateboard. It's, it's Nancy Drew, but there's ghosts
but she's
somehow.
Professional. Yes.
Yeah. It's never just Nancy Drew. Mm-hmm. And I think that maybe that's why the 77 one was so successful. One, because Harriet had a big hand in that show. And
that's true.
It's so close to the original books that they didn't try to change a whole lot. That it is just trying to be Nancy Drew. There is a little bit of a spin that now we have the Hardy Boys here, but that is still pretty faithful with how the Hardy Boys are portrayed.
I just feel like it's so possible. It's like so possible to get to make a Nancy Drew adaptation that is faithful, but also good.
Yeah.
And it's just truly baffling to me how, like, we just can't manage it. We just can't seem to manage it. or at least not for very long.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if they were going to keep going with the CW show, the current one, because people were really pushing for a season 5, and now there's like a zombie cliffhanger that they did at the last end of the season, and it's just like, yeah. Anyway,
I know I've come down hard on the Nancy Drew CW TV show. I don't hate it. I think it's fine. I just don't want to watch it.
it's unintentionally funny to me, and I think that that's a shame.
Yeah. There's just something about seeing characters that you really love be different than the way that you love them.
Absolutely.
That just is like, this isn't right. This is not. And I'm not saying that, like, adaptions can't take things in a new direction and, introduced, like, like new settings and even ghosts, hell, if you really want to. But it's just like, at its core, not a whole lot of the Nancy Drew adaptions that I have seen, I feel like at their core, feel like Nancy Drew and just aren't deserving of the title of Nancy Drew.
Right. It's always like, let's make this brand new mystery show with these cool, different elements and just slap the name Nancy on it.
Yeah, exactly.
And call it good. And it's not the same thing as starting with the character of Nancy and staying true to her and then trying to build around that.
And I feel like the problem at this point is just that Nancy Drew's name is just so ubiquitous that almost like any young female detective gets slapped with the title of Nancy Drew or Nancy Drew-esque, or like if you watch other young detective shows like, Veronica Mars, they called her Nancy Drew all the time. And there are some similarities, but like no more similarities than, the CW Nancy Drew has to actually Nancy.
That's true.
So it's
gosh.
Yeah. But it's just like, at this point, I feel like we really desperately need something or someone to bring us back to the original point of the series in order for us to like regain just what, like the true essence of Nancy Drew.
Right.
It's too scattered. They're all different portrayals. Nobody has a clear sense of what this actually is. It's just all so different and varied. And it's like, but there really is like a common thread and a theme of like, female empowerment and, being young and different a little bit, but like positive, and I don't know. But none of them, like, I feel like actually like capitalize upon that common thread.
Oh, absolutely not. Right.
They'll capitalize on whatever special take that they're doing, and it's just like, come on. But I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Well, and we've said this before, but this is probably very likely the reason why the games were such popular adaptations, because you don't see Nancy, so there's nowhere to like place those expectations, because you are seeing out of Nancy's eyes. You're
acting as Nancy.
Yeah, so.
And you also get to choose, like, whether or not Nancy is forthright in a conversation sometimes, or maybe you choose not to say something. Sometimes you have to say things in order to progress the mystery or whatever. And the more recent ones, you don't. Sometimes you can just move on, so, yeah.
I mean,
so
it's
that makes,
it's very easy to like that portrayal of Nancy Drew when you're deciding what goes into it and how, I mean, obviously it's all predetermined, but what, still.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't even talk about, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say that because, like, I mean, even with those games, it's that, I feel like that holds on to the common thread. The fact that, like, they are PC games in and of itself is kind of like echoing the nature of the books, like, self-determination, you know what I mean?
We didn't even really talk about the the appearance of all these actors that played Nancy, and there's always it's always very polarizing of what an actress looks like, of how well fans will receive her as Nancy. I know that there was a lot of
Sarah Shahi.
They were like, oh, how dare they not make Nancy white? And it's like, gosh, why is that the most important part of this? I want the like her personality to be Nancy. I don't care what she looks like, but
Right.
you know, it's always interesting to see, oh, is she blonde? Is she redheaded? It's, you know,
yeah.
that's
Who are
always
they
a fun
gonna cast?
topic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, in the games, we don't have to see Nancy, so that's not
Of
even an
course.
issue because we are
Yeah.
Nancy. Who cares? So
Yeah. I gotta say that I feel like most of the castings that I have seen have been really great, really talented actresses, and I've always thought that they've done a really good job with that. Obviously, I didn't get to see the Sarah Shahi pilot, but I'm sure she was great as well. You know,
oh, she's a great actress anyway. So
yeah, it's not the issues that I have with these adaptations is never with who's playing Nancy.
yeah, well, that's fair. That's fair.
It's always with, I mean, I'm sure for some people that's an issue. But for me, it's always just like, this is not right. Who is this person? They don't act anything like Nancy. We're not in River Heights. Where's Bess and George?
Why is Bess dead? I don't like it.
If Carson's not hot, I don't want to watch it.
Oh, that reminds me. The 1995 show, we never meet Carson.
No!
He's mentioned one time, but they didn't even cast a Carson. What a missed opportunity.
Man. Such a missed opportunity.
Each episode's so short anyway. We really didn't even have time for Carson, but whatever. Anyway.
Like an older Sam Trammell.
I know.
I know I've told you a million times, Kori, but I have, just for our listeners' sake, I saw Sam Trammell in the Denver airport.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that.
And I didn't go out to him because he clearly wanted to be incognito, like he was wearing like a hat and sunglasses and had like his cell phone to his ear, even though I don't think he was actually talking to anybody on his cell phone.
Awesome.
But I really wanted to.
Was he just as handsome in person?
Oh my God, yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, 100%. Salty gray, like stubble beard.
Oh, nice.
Anyway.
Shameless plug here for our Scoop Sesh series over on Patreon.
Yes.
We did our most recent episode of that. We talked about adaptations we would like to see. So we came up with some concepts for shows that we wish would have been made in the past or that would be made in the future. So if y'all are interested in hearing more discussions on adaptations, because I can't get enough of it personally, come listen to that. But I could probably come up with 1,000 other ideas all day long because I just want every variation of every Nancy Drew adaptation ever.
Listen, I mean, we talk about this in the Scoop Set show if you've listened to that or you are going to listen to that. I'm just going to reiterate it here that Kori and I are available for all any type of consulting work, any, writing anything. Just give us a shout. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com. We're here for it, okay? We are passionate fans, ready to work.
Yes. We know a lot about Nancy Drew between the two of us, and we're learning more every single day. So we would be happy to provide our knowledge to any adaptation of Nancy Drew.
For the low cost.
Oh, man.
Pennies on the dollar, man. Pennies on the dollar.
Anything for Nancy.
Anything.
Oh, man. Becky has an acting career a little bit, so if y'all need...
No, I don't.
No.
No, absolutely not. 100% not. Not available for that. I mean, I guess if you need extra work, I'll be a body on a set, but like...
What if they need a Bess?
No.
I think you could play Bess.
No.
No.
And acting days are far, far behind me.
You got the blonde hair. Apparently that's all you need, right? So, I'm kidding.
But yeah, blonde hair and body issues.
No,
I'm here.
No. Oh, no. That's not a good note to leave it on. I'm sorry.
Sorry. No, it's my own self-deprecating humor. I apologize.
No.
Everything's fine. I'm perfectly at ease. Very
no
happy.
Self-deprecation necessary for you or Bess, honestly.
True.
For anyone, really.
I just meant that Bess and I have that in common. And it's probably why I love Bess so much.
Bess is very relatable.
Very relatable. Hashtag relatable.
That's another thing I would have liked to see in that Drew show in 2016 that they canceled. Give me an alive Bess who opens her own restaurant, because that's a great little arc for Bess.
That is a great arc for Bess.
Growing up, being successful, pursuing her passion.
Embracing your love of food.
Yes.
Ain't nothing wrong with it.
Exactly.
Zero wrong with liking food.
Now we need a history of Bess, Marvin.
I know.
That's the
That would
real
be
story that
complicated.
I'm interested in, yeah.
We'd have to get your alternate universe theory back up and running and Bess being psychic.
Yes. And a witch.
And a witch now. It's too good.
I love Bess.
It's too good.
I think that's all we've got for this one.
Yep, but so next up for episode 56, we are going to be covering, drumroll. I don't know if that sounds like a drum roll.
Does to me?
Do you want to say it, Kori?
Sure. We're going to go back to the mystery stories, of course. We're going to cover number 6, The Secret of Redgate Farm.
I'm excited. You said this is about a cult?
Nancy investigates a cult in this one.
Oh my god.
I've heard that this one is bonkers. It's been a long time since I've read it personally, but I'm excited.
Yeah, I don't remember ever reading this one, like, ever. I have no memory of the plot. That doesn't mean I didn't read it. I just have no memory of it.
I mean, that same goes for a lot of the mystery stories that we read when we were little, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, join us next time, regular Drews.
We'll see you then.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there, thanks for listening.